Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Today is the 21st anniversary of September 11th. 21 years ago, we let our government and our media get too nuts, and they whipped us into a frenzy and started a 20-year-long war that we just got out of. Fast forward a little bit, 18 months, and they're using those laws against us, the American people, that they put in place to get them. But I digress. That's not what this is about. Today, highlighting another iconic gun, one that's been in hundreds of movies, books, been in video games, been in any period piece that encompassed World War II. I am talking about the P08 Luger. Now, the Luger is iconic because of its shape. It is one of the first semi-automatic pistols that was in production. It was expensive to produce. That's why it is no longer in production. The Germans produced it throughout World War II. The United States had got some of the tooling, and companies here and there cloned them or attempted to, but they were never the same quality as the Swiss or the German Lugers. The Luger has served hundreds of countries as their service sidearm during the late 1800s up until the 60s. Okay. The Luger was produced in 1898, and the last one was produced in 1949, according to the documentation I could find. I saw some as late as 1953. It was the greatest American trophy when we were to capture one of our soldiers would. During World War II or World War I. If they captured one, it was a war trophy. If they got to get it and bring it home. Most of the Lugers in the United States were probably war trophies. That's how I got mine. And how do I know mine is a war trophy? Mine had a lot of mystique around it. And I bought it on Gunbroker, which I should have known better. But they were saying that this was some sort of SS officer, Air Force officer also, Luger that was captured. In reality, it was a nickel-plated Luger. Now, I was looking for a Luger that was a shootable example. The plating didn't matter. I would have preferred it be the original bluing. If you've not ever seen an original Luger, they're gorgeous guns. But mine is nickel-plated. It came with crappy plastic faux ivory grips. And if it was one of those supposed guns, which I don't even think those exist, with that much provenance, I would imagine it would have had better than the ill-fitting ivory-ish faux fake grips it had. I've since put replica walnut grips on it. I got a replica holster for it, and I've shot it. I had to buy replica magazines for it because it came without a magazine. Now, the gun is probably worth, even in the condition it is where it's not original, probably close to $1,000. They are iconic everywhere. If you ever watched a World War II movie, you've seen the Luger. If you've ever watched a spy movie, you've probably seen a Luger. I remember seeing it in the series Gotham. When there was an evil doctor, that's what he pulled out at the end of a scene. You've seen the Luger. You've got 8 rounds of rock and roll in it. The one thing I'll tell you is that the rounds, you could tell the gun is built back in the gap because there's some quirks with it. Number one quirk I've had, no matter what round of ammunition I've used, and I've even played with steel case 1 or 2 times, even though this is a gun I want to keep whole. People tell me you don't want to trust your life to steel case. I don't mind shooting steel case. In a worst case, I get a squib round. And with this pistol, I'm not depending on my life with it, and I'm not going to shoot it 100 billion times. It's been that way before. Mine has the original stampings, or I can see through the plating where it was, the Schwarzkopf was on it. It's got the 1932 stamp on it, but that's not when it was made. I think mine was made in 1930 or 1938 or something like that. I may have the M1 manufacturing date backwards too. But the guns are everywhere. And for a while, they were very popular. It popularized the 9mm Luger, or 9mm Parabellum. The round that Europe used and uses to this day. Law enforcement in the United States uses the 9mm Luger. This is where this came from. This round was as powerful as they could get in Europe, I think, although they were making bigger rounds later on, but reliably making. Now, why I say this gun isn't in vogue now is its capacity, 1, and 2, its quirks. It dings your brass. That's where I was going with this. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter if it's steel, doesn't matter, whatever it is, it will ding brass. Okay? This gun ejects with a toggle lock, so it has like a little finger on top of the gun that actually extracts the round, loads another one, and gets in battery. Okay, that's what makes it so iconic when you see it. That and it doesn't have the blocky styling of a Browning design. It is a barrel with this action attached to it and a grip that houses the magazine and the triggering mechanism. The safety on it is kind of crude. And I say kind of crude because the gun is excellently machined. Is why I say it's kind of crude. It serves its function, but how it does it is weird. How the gun actually works is there's a slide bar on the side of the gun, and when you squeeze the trigger, it actually moves this slide bar left and right, which releases the sear, which drops the firing, or the hammer. Well, this isn't a hammer, it's got a striker in it, sort of. And it hits the firing pin, which causes the whole thing to cycle. Okay, so what's interesting about this is when it kicks it back, more often than not, the brass actually hits the gun in one way or another. And that's what causes the dinging of the brass. What's also interesting is it has a loaded chamber indicator. But that safety, where I was going with that, is when you flip it on, it just blocks that bar from moving. It's no different than what happened with a cross pin safety or anything like that. The gun was very well machined. And I've said that multiple times, but there are only, I think, 2 screws on the gun. And I think they house just the grip, the panels. To take the gun apart, you actually have a little tool in the holster that you can use to load the magazine, and you spin it right around on the left-hand side of the gun. There is a panel, and there is a little switch, and I was taught to use this tool because you can use the hole in it to grab that piece, that toggle, and move it really easily. That panel comes off. Once that panel comes off, then you can start stripping apart the gun. The gun being machined so well to fit this way is what made it go away. Same with the 1911 eventually, is that the 1911s, and the 1911s are still here, but that's because our machining processes got better. And there's not as much hand fitting with them as there were with a Luger and the original 1911. The prices you see on like a 1911, really good ones, is because they still hand fit them to make sure that they cycle and do what they need to do. That's the big thing with the 1911, is if you get a really good one, it's been worked over. You have to make it's an older design. Or a Glock or a Smith & Wesson or any modern pistol is injected, molded, CNC slided. Even if they're cold hammer forged barrels, the barrels are made a certain way. Then they're all assembled within tolerance. Okay, the Luger and the 1911, back in the Gap, and most pistols were all hand fitted. That's why they're so coveted, is because every piece is polished. Maybe not towards the end of the war if you get an end of the war Luger, because that's when they started getting cheaper on how processes to get the guns out the door to go fight. But I've seen them gold plated for movies. I've seen them the nickel plated. I've seen them stainless steel. They're everywhere, and they're iconic. Like, share, subscribe, be great.